We are mostly based out of DC. We have offices in DC and in Dallas, in Texas. We started a few years ago cultural transformation. Funny is a company that over the years have become probably more like one of these old established companies that become elephants, very difficult to move. So we started a pilot about 3-4 years ago, I think it was in 2015, to try to begin to turn the company into becoming more customer-centric. Something that honestly was kind of like not happening, especially as we were comparing to other financial institutions. That was not happening at Fannie Mae at all. So we started this journey using the customer centricity and the need to actually prepare for potential GSE reform, because after the 2008 crisis, Fannie entered in conservatorship, so it's regulated by the government. So we needed to start preparing ourselves for an environment where we would be operating in the open market, becoming customer-centric, bringing down silos. So some of the typical things that you would see as triggers of any cultural transformation, but at least when we started at Fannie, nothing was necessarily burning. We were not falling apart. So really decided to start this journey from a position of strength. The company is doing well, but we know that if GSE reform were going to happen, we would be in serious problems. So that was a little bit of the what started the journey. We chose to drive this cultural transformation grounded on lean management. This is a McKinsey framework that we have adopted at Fannie Mae. Many other financial institutions across the country have been adopting this 4 disciplines or 4 loops lean management system. And about a year in or so, we decided to actually make this pilot an enterprise-wide transformation. We started in the main business line in a very small, in the customer-facing teams, a very small portion, if you will, of the company. But then soon after beginning to see the benefits, we said we want this to be the way in which we will drive a transformation at Fannie Mae. This page basically tries to illustrate our vision. The principles are the same. The construct is a little bit different, and this is what I wanted to spend a little bit more time with you on. Is basically here we decided, okay, we're going to be taking a team, in this case the head of single family, and we're going to work on top team effectiveness. We have the belief that if we get this team to actually work a lot better and showcase a role model how they are adopting lean management, the ripple effect will be dramatic. And that was one of our core beliefs. So we put together, we piloted this with McKinsey on the first one that we did. We put together a set of modules. Imagine that each one of these modules is kind of like a half a day. And I think that one of the things that I wanted to highlight from here is this foundational module 1 here that we had. That is basically a day that we focused with the team on crafting team norms and team purpose. Like a foundational thing. It may sound like the most obvious question, but it has really been very challenging modules that we have been having with these teams and some of the other ones that we have done later on. Really, single family leadership team, what is the team purpose? What are you here for? Why are you supposed to be a team? Maybe some of the most fundamental questions that really took a lot to try to answer. But from there you have, at least if you're able to do that, you have the cornerstone, or how and why should we be coming together as a team on an ongoing basis. It goes back, I picked up a couple notes from earlier today. Dan and Jose said, it all starts, Jose Perez said this morning, it all starts with the purpose. And that's why we have this at the very beginning. That is, if we all want to work on trust, on collaboration, and then on setting up and adopting some of the tools, but without purpose, it's probably going to be very difficult to find common grounds and anything else. Later on, then we set up this could have been in this sequence or in other sequence, but we started setting up modules where we would stand up, for example, the weekly huddles for this team. So all of the tools that Jeff from JP Morgan was talking about, but now being adopted by a top team. So this team actually would huddle on a weekly basis, and they would have a huddle board, and they would problem solve on a weekly basis, and they would engage on Gemba walks and coaching and feedback in a deliberate, structured, and consistent way. And that was our pilot. Interestingly enough, when we were halfway through the pilot, the CEO raised his hand and said, I want to go next. Can we do it now? And I don't want to wait. I don't care that this team hasn't finished. I want to do it now. It was like, yeah, from a demand and capacity point of view, it was very difficult. Like, can you say no? Can you say wait 6 more months? So, of course, the answer was yes. And we, when we were 4 months in this journey, we started this journey, but in this case for the CEO and basically the management committee. So actually for the head of single family, he would go through the journey for the second time. The first time as the leader of the team, and the second time as a participant of the team. Halfway through the initial deployment with the management committee, the CFO raised her hand and said, and I want to go next. So those are the 3 active teams that we have been deploying lean management to. With single family, we're already in maturity and in an ongoing sustainment phase. And soon to come, we have already pulled from the COO and the head of multifamily that are really looking forward to actually engage on this journey. So that's going to be coming later on in the lessons learned, because be careful with what you wish for, because it's more or less, and they start raising their hands, and these are often people that you really can't say no to. So fast forwarding, a couple, let me see how I'm doing on time. We're good. A couple of things that I thought about sharing out of all the things that what are some, if you ever consider actually engaging with the top layer of the company, with the SVPs or the EVPs of the company, to try to shift them from being sponsors to practitioners of lean management, of continuous improvement, or of whatever it is that you're having in your organization. There's a few things that we learned along the way. Some successes that we have had to date, and in the next video I'll share some of the struggles that we're having. But number one is you need to have very, very strong pull from the CEO. If you want to make this a company-wide initiative, then it has to be from the CEO. This probably you have heard multiple times, but this one is another one that at least I discovered over the last 2 years. I wasn't paying attention that much before when I was at Boy or even with McKinsey. It is this notion of connecting your lean management journey with all the other initiatives that are happening in the organization. How are you? We at Funny, we have, for example, something that we call EDP, Executive Development Program, which takes place at MIT. It's a 2-week program, 1 week, 6 months, and then another week. And we actually partnered with the MIT faculty in bringing together lean management, our way of doing lean management, with that program. That ended up becoming super powerful. You could miss that, and that would be a big miss. Same with how are you partnering with comms, with other HR efforts, etc. So that has been a tremendous, I think, lesson for us. Another one has been the notion of actually sustaining and maturing. Many companies actually focus only on the first part, all the way up to here. We don't focus that much on how is the sustaining and maturing support going to look like. What happens when we finish this set of modules and tools, etc. Is there going to be some sort of maturity or sustainment checkpoints and what have you? And we mounted a full, basically, maturity program around each one of these efforts. Like, if you let go of those teams, it is too early on to actually think that this is going to self-sustain and self-mature. So these are a couple of the key elements to consider and lessons learned. But I got to tell you that seeing today, I go to these huddles mostly every Monday. It is CEO-led huddles that take place every Monday that drive a tremendous amount of connectivity across the company in just 1 hour long meetings, followed by problem solving. The head of single family, the CFO and other leaders in the company engaging on Gemba walks. Something that you would say, it's very like, they have like their bi-weekly, in some cases monthly, Gemba walk plan, and they actually go and see, and one of the people on my team would actually go with them on the Gemba walk, and what have you. It has had tremendous amount of actually bringing an EVP close to the front line or the tier 1 managers and being able to take the pulse of what's really happening on the floor. It's been tremendously powerful. I would have never thought that this would have picked up in the company. And then this, that was a central issue, trust. As we were working and beginning to go through this coaching and feedback modules, you begin to see how trust and more open and transparent conversations begin to happen when the team comes together has been tremendously positive. So these are some of the things that have worked well. Of course, there's a long way to go. Problem solving is always hard. This notion of the 8-3, do you have a problem statement? Preventing them from jumping into solutioning before doing a root cause analysis. All of those things are things that we still have a long way to go, but we have the pull. We have the will from them saying, I know this works, I know it's hard, but I really believe in the value that it will help us. We have an issue with red at Honey. Nobody can embrace red. Maybe because of what happened in 2008 and what have you, but you can't be in red. You can't embrace it. And it's something, it's very, like, everything has to be in green. Red is bad. Red is, your job is at risk immediately. So this is something that we still have a long with this. And then interestingly, it's like, if you can't embrace the red, then nobody else will. Don't think that at the associate level embracing the red gets any easier than at your level. So I know that this is something that, but at least there's awareness now. We're talking about it. We threw the fish on the table and we say, guys, do you realize that you can't embrace the red because you think it is about war, that immediately that means trouble. It doesn't mean continuous improvement. So again, working on that. Owning strategy cascade. This has been tremendous. The uncovering the thing and saying, oh, you thought that strategy would get cascaded, that corporate communications is going to cascade strategy. Right. And it's going to send an email and it's going to explain how strategy works, and then good things are going to happen. So beginning to have those dialogues, I think this is more in our next level of good area, but we're already uncovering this things to work on. One other lesson learned, and the last one, which is, if you ever actually consider engaging in some of this, you have to be very careful to be able to handle it when it comes. Because when this demand comes your way, it's very difficult to say no. Every single time you end up saying yes, and you think that you're going to be able to say no or to manage demand in some way, and you're in trouble. And then you end up saying, how do you pull resources and horsepower to actually be able to pull this off? Because it takes really a lot of time. So that has been one of the areas that for us, we call ourselves the transformation office. It has been really challenging. So this is my three takeaways, and then I would love to open it up for some questions. My three takeaways from basically all of this is very connected to what was happening in this morning. You're going to start and focus more and more and more in the why and on the purpose, less on the what, especially when you come to the top layer of the company. I think that Jose said it this morning, then Jeff said it again, focused on the why, the purpose, why we're doing this. Lesson number one. The second one has been following through. If you're going to start something, you stay for good. You you stick, you stay, and you think about sustainment and maturity, you follow through, you don't let go. And the third one has been for us, lean management, continuous improvement is full of shades of gray. There's 150 different frameworks. And I don't think that there's one that has proven to be tremendously better than all of the other ones, but pick one and stick to it. If you actually shift framework, shift courses, you say, oh, PDCA is not for me, I'm going to use the 8 steps, or I'm going to shift this template for this other one. I picked up from this morning, be cautious about going after the next big thing. What do you mean? The principles don't change. They will stay forever. So pick a shade of gray and stick to it and make it work versus try to, oh, this one didn't work for me, let's go after the next one. That's probably not going to do any help whatsoever. So those, at least for me, as I have been navigating this journey of family over the last 2 years, have been like 3 powerful lessons learned that I'm going to be taking anywhere I go. So with that, this is the first part, so thank you. I was going to be opening it up for questions.
Beautiful. Great job. So a question, I resonate with your comment about jumping to solution and not doing root cause analysis. So
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? How do you get them to think more about what the real problem is in root cause analysis before jumping into the solution?
Well, I don't know that this is a good answer. This is what we're doing. And what it seems to be helping, and it has been helping for the last year. I would be cautious to actually call this a good practice. What we have been doing is most of the problem-solving sessions that are taking place in any of these top teams, we are facilitating them. I am there facilitating them. So I would go and I would prep with whomever typically the problem owner or the problem sponsor is. And before you would come into the management committee meeting or the single family leadership team meeting or the CFO leadership team meeting, I would pre-vet like the A3 and make sure that it's filled out, and I would then go and facilitate and try to do that hand holding. Again, that comes with a lot of demand because then you are, but at some time you have to let go. We haven't let go yet. We're very much there helping and hand holding, and we play, for example, a facilitator role. And then when you're there, you can influence quite a bit and prevent people from jumping into solutioning or not being able to even answer when they're already like on the 4th derivative of the solution. What problem are you trying to solve for? Because you're facilitating and you help them prep and you are also taking care of the action items that happen after, etc., etc. We have been getting some very positive traction, but it comes at a cost. It has been coming at a cost so far.
Steve Bell from First Management. It's real interesting. So one of the considerations you use that pull from your CO, and we can have a whole conference on getting the pull from the CO.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, in our case, we have a lot of good interest in lean and certainly lean management is followed at the site level. But we start getting to the upper levels of the company, there's less interest in owning it themselves. More, you guys do that. So how do you get that pull from the product?
Well, I think that it's funny that came pretty naturally, and maybe that was a gift because we didn't have to do a lot of work to make that actually happen. But in other companies that I worked, when I was at McKinsey, for example, Rahul and we worked at MetLife, and when we started working in operations, for example, I don't know how much the CEO knew what we were doing, but at least we got one senior leader that a sponsor that was senior enough to actually help this start. And then I think that, for example, the story at MetLife is been by word of mouth and by actually then ramping and others beginning to hear, oh, look at the good things that are happening in this area of our gigantic empire. And then if you don't get that traction, that word of mouth, it's probably going to be very difficult. I don't know that there's a one single answer, but that has been one that I've seen in multiple companies. Start small, and then build a showcase example, and then when you're ready, you bring in the CEO, you bring others to go and see, come and see. But instead of going and seeing ING in Amsterdam, or going and seeing Mass Mutual in Springfield, or Liberty Mutual in Boston, you actually, when you develop an internal go and see, that could be very powerful.
Yeah,
Or the CEO,
we're getting there in terms of understanding within the organization. They certainly have great sponsorship, and they've adopted Bush and Cameron, and in 4 years they've been doing that very well. But to get them involved with peer process and public boards and that kind of management, right now, very difficult.
Yeah.
Hi, I've got a question about, well, first of all, thank you for sharing the journey.
Oh, thank you for
Really
coming.
insightful. I'm wondering, is there a discussion now going on around how you revisit your values and how you start to integrate some of these things that you're teaching everybody into sort of the values of the organization?
Oh yes.
Is it part of the habit?
Oh yes, yes. I think that is in our journey. That is probably coming up next. So we started using. We started using we started using this 4 disciplines framework. One more. And we made a connection of this framework with the values that the company, of course, already had, and the mission and the vision of the company. One thing that, I don't know that when we will be revisiting the values of the company, but what we know for sure that we want to bring in sooner rather than later are the 10 Shingo principles that I think Jeff also shared this morning. We have been timidly been bringing them in, but at Voya Financial, where I was before the pandemic, we brought them in big time, and they become ingrained pretty much in the organization. And then I don't know, the values we didn't touch them because they were, thank you. The values we didn't touch them because they were crafted in a way that they're like principle based, so they don't change over time that much. I don't know that. I think revisiting the values is probably like 5 or 6 next levels of good ahead of us. Right now we probably have enough to get entertained with bringing in the 10 single principles, sustaining, making things incrementally improve. I think that should be coming, but it's probably further ahead of where we are. We're probably not ready to have that conversation yet.
So you mentioned the Gemma walks.
Yes.
For me, it's a great mechanism and method to engage the executives and support and sponsor transformation. So the question is, are you teaching the executives how to do the Gemma walk, how to ask the right questions, or it just, we executives walk around, shaking hands, smiling to people, and then go away?
Well, no, you could do that, and then if you do that, then typically you do 1 or 2, and then immediately the pool will. What I've seen is that when you do that, the pool will stop. And when you actually leave it up to the executive to pull it together, how the Gemma walk is going to go, you would have to be extremely lucky for the leader to pull it off himself. So what we're doing right now, and it goes back to the question that you were asking, we're hand-holding that pretty much as well. So we know there's pull. So I would sit, for example, this took place the other day. I came up with all of this Gemba walk plan for the head of single family 2 weeks ago, letting him know the 6 different areas where I felt that he needed to go to, and he came back and said, Augustin, no, it's not going to work. We're reorganizing risk and digital operating model. I need to stay a lot closer. I need you to put me in front of those guys bi-weekly for the next 3 months, and then we can talk about all the things. Okay, boom, boom, boom. The following Friday, we took him to Reston, to another DC location that we had, and it was all prep. What questions do you want to ask for? There was a couple of round tables, so it's highly orchestrated, but the guy is actually going and seeing frontline huddles. And then immediately the huddle of the manager of that huddle. And then maybe a round table with frontline staff over the course of an hour or two. If it happens in Plano, it might be a half a day. If it happens in DC, you could do this only in 1 hour. So what we have been doing is highly hand-holded, if you will. And either I or somebody on my team would be there going with him, and I actually would then the following through takeaway that I would just share, ensure that he followed through. You can't actually come and visit all these people and then not follow through. At a minimum, the thank you note, and then 3 months later, when you said, I want to see where you are 3 months later, take a note, 3 months, I'm going to come and say, you need to follow through this, and not with this guy. So again, I haven't seen this ever, I think, self-sustaining alone. I know that there's examples in history, like somebody would say, Abraham Lincoln used to spend 15 days a month with the troops out there in the field. And there's probably many examples of leaders like the name slipped out, the CEO of General Electric. Jack Welch, and many of these other guys, but those are exceptions. I haven't seen this really work well without strong hand-holding.